Hello everyone. Today we will start with the new chapter that is Kingdoms, Kings, and an Early Republic. In our earlier chapters, we discussed the life of early humans and how they formed small tribal groups. These groups were primarily nomadic, relying on hunting and gathering, but as time went on, they began to settle down. The development of agriculture was a game changer. With farming, communities could produce surplus food, leading to larger population. This agriculture revolution marked the first step toward the more complex societies. As this settlement grew, trade also flourished. With surplus crops, people could trade with the neighboring regions. This exchange of goods and ideas helped create connection between the different groups, paving the way for the rise of larger political unit. These interactions led to the formation of larger settlement, which eventually evolved into the kingdoms. The rise of kingdoms in ancient India occurred through several interconnected processes. Let's learn these interconnection one by one. First is agriculture development. Now, agriculture became the backbone of society, leading to surplus production. This surplus allowed communities to support larger population and laid the foundation for more complex social structure. Now, the second is increased trade. With surplus food, communities could engage in trade. Trade routes facilitated interaction between different regions, promoting economic growth and the exchange of ideas. Now, third is the formation of large settlement. As population grew, smaller tribal groups began to settle in larger, more organized communities. These larger settlements often developed into early kingdoms. Now, fourth is need for leadership. The complexities of managing larger communities necessitated the emergence of leaders. Powerful individuals often took on the role of kings, establishing authority and governance structures. Now, fifth is military power. As kingdom formed, the need for defense against invasions or conflict with the neighboring groups led to the establishment of organized armies. Kings often gained power by conquering other territories. Now, cultural and religious factor also played an important role. The spread of cultural and religious practices also played a very important role. Kings often used religion to legitimize their rule, portraying themselves as chosen by divine forces. Now, you may have heard about the Ashwamedh Yajna. The Ashwamedha Yajna or the horse sacrifice was an ancient Vedic ritual performed by kings in India, symbolizing sovereignty and authority. Now, in the Ashwamedha Yajna, a specially chosen horse would be set free to roam for a specific duration. The horse represented the king's authority and territorial claims. As the horse wandered, any other king who encountered it had to either accept the authority of the king conducting the yajna or challenge him in battle. Defeating the challengers further solidified the king's power. Let's explore the Varna system. First, let's discuss the role of women and sons. Were they performed in the yajna or not? It is written here that his relatives, meaning king's relatives and wives and sons, they had to perform a variety of minor rituals. The meaning the role of the woman was not very prominent, but they participated in the rituals. Now let's explore the Varna system, which emerged during the Vedic era in ancient India. While the Varna system was initially a flexible classification based on occupation and skills, over time it became more rigid, leading to social stratification. This rigidity contributed to the development of the caste system, where social mobility became limited. Here, here is a breakdown of different varnas. Now, first one is Brahmin. The first varna was that of the Brahmin. Now, the Brahmin meaning priestly class responsible for religious rituals, teachings, and maintaining sacred knowledge. Now, they were considered the highest varna. Now, the second one was Kshatriya, the warrior and the ruler class. They were tasked with protecting the realm, enforcing justice, and governing. They were associated with power and military leadership. Now, third one is Vaishyas. Now, the Vaishyas were merchant or the agriculture class. They were responsible for trade, commerce, and agriculture. They played a crucial role in the economy. Now, the last one are Shudras. Now, Shudras were laboring class. They served the other three varnas. They performed various tasks and were responsible for manual labor and service roles. During the early Vedic period, the caste system was more fluid and based on occupation rather than strictly on birth. People were free to change their profession and marry into other caste. As kingdom formed, the Varna system began to solidify, leading to greater social stratification. The hierarchical structure started to create division that were not always well received by all groups. As the Varna system became more rigid, individuals from lower Varnas, especially Sudras, faced increasing restriction. This likely led to the dissatisfaction, though organized, though organized opposition was not prominent during the early kingdom phase. Now, the next topic is Janpadas. Now, concept of Janpadas meaning land of people emerged around the 6th century BCE. One of the primary catalysts for this development was agriculture advancement. As communities transitioned from nomadic lifestyle to settled agriculture, they began to produce surplus food. This surplus was vital as it led to population growth and the establishment of permanent settlement. With people settling in one place, permanent villages began to form. These villages laid the groundwork for larger political unit, that what we know known to as Janpadas. Now, archaeologists have excavated several settlements in these Janpadas, including Purana Kila in Delhi, Hastinapur near Meerut, and Atranji Kheda in Etah. These are the important sites. Please note it down. One interesting question to consider is there a crop in this list that wasn't mentioned in the chapter 3? Now, in the Vedic period, the diet primarily consists of barley, wheat, and rice, along with dairy products and occasional meat from sacrificial rituals. However, with settled agriculture and trade, the diet became more diverse. People began to cultivate a wider variety of grains, pulses, and vegetables and fruit. But who do you think led these growing communities? As communities became more complex, the need for stronger leadership emerged. Powerful individuals, often known as kings, started to take charge, establishing governance and order. But with the leadership came the need for protection. As these kingdoms expanded, they faced threats from neighboring tribes and other kingdoms. This led to the establishment of organized armies, further solidifying the power of kings. But with leadership came the need for protection. As these kingdoms expanded, they faced threat from neighboring tribes and other kingdoms. This led to the establishment of organized army, further solidifying the power of kings. Let's discuss the formation of Janpadas in ancient India, an important topic that highlight the early political unit that laid the foundation for future kingdom. Let's explore how these Janpadas came into existence. Janpadas means place where people set its foot. The first significant factor in the formation of Janpada was the shift from a nomadic lifestyle to settled agriculture. As people began to cultivate land, permanent settlement emerged. This agriculture development not only provided food security but also encouraged the establishment of villages, which served as the initial building blocks of Janpadas. With increased agriculture production came population growth. More food meant that families could sustain larger numbers, leading to the development of more complex social structure. This demographic expansion created the need for organized governance and resource management, which was essential for maintaining order in growing communities. The rise of trade routes further facilitated the formation of Janpadas. As villages interacted with one another, exchanging goods and resources, economic ties strengthened. Trade not only promoted economic prosperity but also fostered cultural exchanges, enriching the social fabric of these early political units. As communities grew, so did the complexities of their social organization. Leadership structure began to form, often led by chieftains or local rulers. These leaders played a crucial role in managing resources, settling dispute and maintaining order, which helped solidify the identity and governance in the Janpadas. With the establishment of these social and economic structure, communities began to assert territorial control. As they expanded their influence, they defined boundaries and established Janpadas as distinct political entities. The territorial assertion was vital for resource management and defense against external threats. Lastly, cultural unity played a significant role in the formation of Janpadas. Shared language, customs, religious practices helped forge a collective identity among the inhabitants. This cultural cohesion was instrumental in unifying diverse groups under the Janpada banner. As these Janpada grew in size and complexities, some evolved into Mahajanpadas around the 6th century BCE. This transition marked a significant development in political organization. These were significant political entities that played a crucial role in the region's history. Now there were 16 Mahajanpadas. Now these are mentioned here. Now first one is Magadha, Koshala, Kashi, and Vassa, Avanti, Gandhara, Kuru, Panchala, Malla, Surasena, Vajji, now Lichavi, Naga, Shakya, Kamboja. These were the Mahajanpadas. These Mahajanpadas varied in size, governance, and influence. They played a vital role in the political and cultural landscape of ancient India. Now, on a side note, I highly recommend checking out the epic series that is, it is titled Rajvansh on YouTube. It offers a captivating portrayal of ancient Indian kingdoms, blending historical facts with the engaging storytelling. This series not only helps you understand the political and cultural dynamics of the time, but also brings history to life in a way that textbook often can't. It's a great way to supplement your preparation and deepen your knowledge of India's rich heritage while helping you entertain. Now coming back to the topic, each Mahajanpada had its own political system, which could be either monarchical or republic in nature. Now some of these kingdoms were monarchy, that is, they were ruled by king. Others like the Lichavi of Richi or the Mallas of Kushinagar were republic. They were ruled by a group of tribal chieftains. Of course, these were not the republic the way we think of the in the today's world where everyone votes. Instead, in a system called oligarchy, where tribal chieftains meet and decide the important matter while common people had no say at all. One key aspect of Mahajanpadas was their fortification. Now, question arises as to why these defensive structures were crucial for their survival and success. Now, first and foremost, fortification was essential for defense against invasion. Now, the ancient Indian subcontinent was often subject to attacks from rival kingdoms and nomadic tribes. Strong walls and gates provided a barrier, protecting the inhabitant from external threats and ensuring the safety of their communities. Fortified walls helped establish control over territory. As Mahajanpadas expanded, it became vital for rulers to manage their land effectively. Fortification enabled better surveillance and the defense of borders, ensuring that resources and population remained secure. Fortification also played a significant role in military strategy. A fortified city could house a standing army and serve as a base for military operations. This organization allowed for quick response to threats and better coordination during conflicts. Beyond their practical uses, fortification served as a symbol of power. A well fortified city projected strength and stability, which could deter potential aggressor. It showcased the authority of the ruling dynasty and reinforced the idea of a strong, unified state. Fortification were also crucial for economic security. By protecting trade routes and markets, they ensured that commerce could thrive without the constant fear of attack. This economic stability was vital for the prosperity of the Mahajanpadas. Lastly, the presence of fortified walls contributed to political stability. A secure environment reduced the likelihood of internal conflict and rebellions, allowing rulers to maintain control and focus on governance and development. Here the picture of fortified wall is given. This is in modern day Prayagraj, that is, which used to be Allahabad. So were the Rajas maintaining army? Now, answer is yes. To begin, let's discuss why armies were essential for Mahajanpadas. These ancient political entities faced constant threat from rival kingdom and nomadic groups. A standing army was crucial for defense and security. This structured approach allowed them to respond effectively to conflicts and engaged in territorial expansion. The organization of these armies were indicative of the political sophistication of the Mahajanpadas. To maintain army and build fort, they needed resources, and to collect these resources, they needed officials. The need to maintain an army and build fortification was a primary driver for imposing taxes in the Mahajanpadas. Now, in the Mahajanpadas, various type of taxes were levied, each serving different purpose. Now, there were some taxes on the crops, a form of taxes paid by landowners, which was called bhaga, typically a share of the harvest. It was often around the 1/6 to 1/4 of the produce. There were other taxes too, which are mentioned here. Read it once. And what do you think would have been provided by the hunter and the gatherer? While the traditional hunter-gatherer did not pay taxes in the Mahajanpadas, those who transitioned to settled agriculture lifestyle would have become part of the taxation system that emerged in these more complex political entities. If they were required to pay taxes, it likely would have been in form of the forest produce such as fruits and seed, or they might have contributed wood for the fortification. Let us see what changes in agriculture took place during this time. During the period of the Mahajanpadas, significant changes occurred in agriculture that transformed the landscape of rural life and economy. Iron plows were used during the Mahajanpadas which greatly improved farming. They were stronger and more effective than wooden plows, allowing farmers to till the soil more deeply. This made farming more efficient, helping them cultivate larger areas and increased crop yield. Now, some other key development which happened in the area of agriculture are They shifted to settled agriculture. Many communities transitioned from nomadic lifestyle to settled farming. This, this shift allowed for the cultivation of crop in the fixed location, leading to more stable food supplies. Now, introduction of new crops. There was an expansion in the variety of crops being cultivated, including rice, wheat, barley, and pulses. The adoption of new technology contributed to higher yields. Improved agriculture techniques also contributed in the agriculture. Now, advance in farming methods such as crop rotation and better irrigation systems enhanced productivity. The use of plows and animal drawn equipment became more common. Now, irrigation system also affected the agriculture. The development of irrigation system, including canals and wells, allowed farmers to cultivate land more effectively, especially in areas prone to drought. Now, market integration with increased agriculture production, surplus crops were traded in local markets. This integration into a market economy stimulated economic growth and social organization. Now, land ownership changes as agriculture became more prominent. Concepts of land ownership began to emerge, leading to the establishment of land holding classes and a more stratified society. Now, there were the role of taxes also. The need for taxes on agriculture produce to support state function became more pronounced as rulers sought revenue for armies and infrastructure. Now, agriculture surplus supported larger population, leading to the development of more complex social structure, including increased specialization of labor. Agriculture was the backbone of the economy during Mahajanpadas, with large areas of land under cultivation. The labor-intensive nature of farming required a considerable workforce to manage tasks like plowing, sowing, weeding, and harvesting. In Mahajanpadas, the society was hierarchical, and those at the top, such as landowners and wealthy merchants, often did not engage in manual labor themselves. They relied on dasas, dasis, or the kamkaras to perform the necessary work on their farms, allowing the elite to focus on trade, administration, and governance. Now, can you think why kings would encourage these changes? Now, kings in the Mahajanpadas focused on transforming agriculture because the improved agriculture practices led to economic prosperity. By increasing food production, the entire economy thrived. With more crops came higher taxes revenue. This meant more resources for governance and military, strengthening the king's power. Ensuring a stable food supply was crucial. It reduced the risk of famine and social unrest, keeping the kingdom peaceful. Better agriculture also supported population growth. More food meant larger communities, which increased both the labor force and consumers. Kings invested in infrastructure like irrigation and roads. These improvements not only boosted farming efficiency but also facilitated trade. Finally, agriculture held cultural significance. By supporting it, kings aligned themselves with the values of their subjects, gaining legitimacy and support. Let's embark on a journey into the fascinating world of Magad Empire, a formidable force that played a pivotal role in shaping ancient history. Now, before reading this, let me tell you the dynasty before the rise of the Magad Empire. Magad was one of the 16 Mahajanpadas or Greater Kingdom that emerged during the 6th century BCE. It rose to prominence amidst the decline of earlier tribal and monarchical system. Now let's talk about the major dynasty that ruled the. First one is Haryanka dynasty. The rise of Magad began with the Haryanka dynasty, founded by the Bimbisara in the 6th century BCE. Now, Bimbisara expanded the territory through military conquest and strategic marriages. Following the Haryanka dynasty, Shishunaga dynasty came, which further consolidated power, establishing Patliputra as the capital. This was succeeded by the Nanda dynasty, known for its wealth and military strength under Dhanananda. Now, Patliputra became a major political and cultural center not only for Magadh but for the entire region, eventually serving as the capital of the Mauryan Empire. Now, Magadh was located in the eastern part of the present-day Bihar, along the banks of the Ganga River. Economically, Magadha thrived on fertile land and strategic trade route, attracting merchants and contributing to which contributed to their wealth and stability. The other kingdom which came, Kosala, Vassa, these were the major kingdom before the rise of the Magadha Empire. Now you can take the screenshot of this to revise later. Now Magadh strategic location made it an agriculture and trade hub, contributing to its economic prosperity. The Magadha Empire had a centralized administration, particularly under the Nanda and Mauryan dynasties, which allowed for effective governance over vast territories. Their powerful military was crucial for both expansion and defense. Now, iron provided a military advantage. The ability to produce longer, stronger, and more effective weapon gave Magadha armies the upper hand in battle. Enhanced weaponry allowed them to conquer neighboring territories and defend against the rival kingdom. But the benefit of iron did not stop at warfare. The introduction of iron tools, especially plows, revolutionized agriculture. These tools improved farming efficiency, leading to increased crop yield. This agriculture surplus supported a growing population and provided essential resource for trade. With economic prosperity came the opportunity for trade. Magadh became a center for iron production, attracting merchants from various regions. This not only enhanced its wealth but also solidified its status as a regional power. Now let's see how the armies of the Rigvedic period and Mahajanpadas were different. Now in the Rigvedic period, armies were made up of tribal warriors led by chieftains. They were small and localized, often formed by specific battles or raids. By the time of Magadha Empire, armies became more organized and professional. They included infantry, cavalry, with a clear command structure for coordinated attack. Now let's look at weaponry and technology. Now Rigvedic warriors primarily used bows, arrows, and simple weapons like wooden clubs or spears. Their technology was quite basic. In contrast, Magadha soldiers had access to iron weapons. This included iron swords and shields, making them much more effective in battle. Let's look at the role of military in society. In the Rigvedic context, warriors had a special social and ritualistic role. Their achievements were celebrated but not primarily focused on state building. Now, in the Magadha Empire, the military was a crucial tool for expanding the empire and maintaining control over vast regions. Now, let's take a closer look at another Mahajanpada, that is Vachi. Vachi, also known as Vachi Confederacy or the Lichavi Republic. Let us see the geographical location of Vachi. Vachi is here near the Magadha. Now, Vachi was located in the northeastern part of the modern day Bihar, near the Ganga River. The capital city was Vaishali, which is historically significant for being one of the earliest republic. Now, unlike monarchies prevalent in the region, Vachi operated as a confederacy of clans known as Gana or Sangha. The term Gana or Sangha, Gana or Sangha. The term Gana means generally a group or a collective. It was often used to describe assemblies or councils composed of various clans or tribes, while Sangha means association or community, and it often referred to a group of people united for a common purpose, particularly in governance. While all the people participated in the meetings, dasas and kammakaras could not participate. They were excluded from participating in the decision-making process. There were clans in the Vajji, but the Lichavis were the most prominent clan within the Vajji confederacy, playing a leading role in its governance. Vaishali was not only a political center but also a cultural and the religious hub, known for its contribution to Buddhism and Jainism. Now, it was a site where important event such as the Second Buddhist Council took place. Both Gautam Buddha and Mahavira was the founder of Jainism and Buddha was the founder of Buddhism. They had connection to Vajji region, particularly to the city of Vaishali, which was a significant center in the Vajji confederacy. Vajji had a stronger military capable of defending against neighboring powers. It often engaged in conflicts with emerging power like Magad, leading to significant political dynamics in the region. Vajji eventually faced decline due to the conflict with Magadha, particularly under the leadership of Bimbisara and Ajatashatru, who sought to expand their territory. Here is a fascinating historical account for you to explore. I encourage you to read it thoroughly and try your hand at the accompanying question. This exercise will help deepen your understanding and enhance your analytical skills. Give it a shot. Now let's see what was happening in the other part of the world during this time. While the Mahajanpadas were developing in India, Greece was undergoing significant political, cultural and an economic transformation that would shape its future. The emergence of city-state, early domestic practices, and the flourishing of art and philosophy were key features of this period in Greek history. Read this and try to attempt this question. Do you think this was a true democracy? After reading this, answer this question. Now I'm answering from my perspective. Now Athens is often celebrated as the birthplace of democracy, but its democratic system had significant limitation. Only free male citizens of Athens could participate. This included women. Now here it is mentioned that women were not considered as citizens. Now women, slaves and foreigners who made up a significant portion of the population, they were excluded from participating. Many public offices were filled by lot, that is a random selection rather by elections. Now which aimed to reduce corruption and ensure broader participation. However, key positions, especially military and strategic roles, were often held by elites. While Athens is a foundational example of democracy, it was not a true democracy. By modern standards, the inclusion of large segment of the population and the influence of elites reveal the complexities and limitation of Athenian democratic practices. Nonetheless, its legacy continues to influence contemporary ideas about governance and civic participation. Moving on to another section, that is imagine. Now you are peeping through a crack in the walls of the assembly of Vaishali, where a meeting is in progress to discuss ways to deal with an attack by the king of the Magad. Describe what you might hear. Now, as I peer through the crack in the walls of the assembly in Vaishali, a bustling atmosphere envelops me. The chamber is alive with the voices, echoing the urgency of the movement. The atmosphere is charged with urgency and determination. The leaders of the Vaishali weigh their options carefully, striving to balance the call for action with the need for careful strategy. The fate of the Confederacy hangs in the balance as they consider their next step against the looming threat of the Magad. Let's see the next question, whether given statements are true or false. Now, the Rajas who led the Ashwamedha horse pass through their land were invited to the sacrifice. Yes, the Raja who led the Ashwamedha horse pass through their lands were invited to the sacrifice. This statement is true. In ancient Indian tradition, the Ashwamedha was a significant ritual performed by kings to assert their sovereignty and power. Those Raja who allowed the horses to pass through their territories were considered to have acknowledged the authority of the king, performing the sacrifice, and were subsequently invited to participate in the ritual. This practice symbolized alliance and the acknowledgement of the king's dominance. Now, the next question is, the charioteer sprinkled sacred waters on the kings. This statement is false. It was typically the priest who sprinkled the sacred water as part of the ritual. The charioteer had an important role, but the act of sprinkling water was generally performed by the officiating priest to purify the space and invoke blessings. Now, the third one is, archaeologists have found palaces in the settlement of the Janpadas. Now, archaeologists have indeed discovered palaces and the large structure in various Janpadas settlement, particularly in regions like Magad and Vaishali. Archaeologists have also found the evidence of huts and other type of dwelling in Janpadas settlement. Now, pots to store grain were made out of painted grey ware. I forgot to tell you about the painted grey ware, which is mentioned here. Now, the painted grey ware, these were found in many Janpadas region. Now, they were typically grey, resulting from the clay and firing method. Now, often features painted geometrical pattern or motifs. They were applied using slips or pigments before firing. Now, where are these found? Some sites are Kaushambi. Now, Kaushambi excavation have revealed a variety of painted grey ware, often used for storage and cooking. Now, another site is Rajgir. Pottery from this site display intricate design reflecting the artistic trend of the time. Now, what was this purpose? Perhaps these were used on special occasion. They might be used for important people. They might have been used to put the special food. Now, let's consider the question. Pots to store grain were made out of painted grey ware. Yes, statement is true. In the Mahajanpada period, pots made from painted grey ware were commonly used for storing grains and other agriculture products. Painted grey ware refers to pottery made from a specific clay that, when fired, produces a greyish color. This was often adorned with decorative patterns. Now, the next question is, many cities in Mahajanpadas were fortified. Yes, many cities in Mahajanpadas were indeed fortified. The construction of fortifications such as walls and trenches was a common practice as a defense mechanism against invasion and conflicts. Let's see the next exercise. You have to fill in the blanks by providing information on what these people gave as taxes. Like if you take the example of hunter-gatherer, it is mentioned here, hunter-gatherers. They have to provide forest produce such as woods, furs and other items as a tribute to the Raja. Now, others, write on your own. I think we have already discussed, so you can write. Who are the groups who could not participate in the assemblies of the Gana? Now, these assemblies were important for decision making, but not everyone could participate. We have the dasas. They were the slaves or the servants. Because they had no political right, they were not allowed to take part in the assemblies. Next, we have kamakaras. These were the artisan or the landless laborers. Despite their skills, they were also excluded from the decision making process. Generally, women did not have the right to participate in these assemblies, reflecting the gender norms of that time. Now another section is let's discuss. In this section, first question is why the Rajas of Mahajanpadas built forts. Although we have already discussed, but there are a few points which I would like to convey. Like the Rajas of the Mahajanpadas built fort for several reasons. One of them might be defense. Now the forts protected against attack from rival kingdom and the tribes. Now the second one is control. They help ruler maintain control over their territory and manage resources. Now third could be strategic location. Many forts were built near the trade routes, allowing Rajas to monitor and the control trade. Now fourth can be symbol of power. Fortified cities shows its strength and the prestige of the ruler, deterring potential attackers. Now they provided a safe refuge for the local population during conflict. Another could be fort serves as a center for local governance, tax collection and the maintaining order. Now the next question is very interesting. In what way are present day election different from the ways in which the rulers were chosen in Mahajanpadas? Now today rulers are chosen through voting. Citizens cast their vote to elect leaders. In the Janpadas, rulers are often selected based on family lineage or military power, not by popular vote. Today, all eligible citizens can vote regardless of gender or class. In Janapadas, only free male citizens could participate, excluding women, lower classes. Today, we have a structured democratic system with various political parties. In Janapadas, powers was held by a few ruling families or clans, often based on tribal affiliation. Now, present-day elections are democratic and inclusive, while rulers in Janpadas were often chosen through hereditary means with limited public participation. Understanding these differences help us appreciate the evolution of governance. As I finish our discussion today, I want to emphasize the importance of reading and revising the topics we cover in class. Engaging with the material outside of our lectures can really enhance your understanding and retention. Dedicate a specific time in your week by reading and revision. Jot down key points and key questions as you read. This will help you remember important concepts. Thank you. In the next video, we will discuss the next chapter, that is new questions and ideas. Thank you.